Welcome to Venice Views. I'm Pam Johnson, Marketing and Communications Officer for the City of Venice. And today we're continuing our interviews with people who've been in Venice for a long time. Maybe other generations of their family came here before they did. And so that being the case here, I'm with Steve Johns. Steve, welcome. And we're going to talk about how his family got to Venice and how Venice used to be and where we're headed. So Steve, welcome. And first tell us a little bit about how your folks got to Venice.
Okay. Well, my father was originally from Live Oak, Florida, up near the Georgia line. And he migrated down the state after his brothers and sisters were all educated and went to Punta Gorda, where I had an uncle in Punta Gorda, and his name was Vasco Peoples. He was a state representative. And my father went down to build some stores for him and an insurance agency and a car dealership or something. And while he was there, Joe Spadaro heard about him and came down and said, I would like for you to come to Venice. And I would like for you to help me build the MacArthur Beach Hotel and redo the Boca Grande Hotel. And that brought my father to Venice. Well,
before you go any further, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Golden, or what did you say it was, the MacArthur Beach. That's a condominium now, right?
Yes.
The same place.
I believe it's
in
a
Golden
tennis
Beach.
club.
A tennis.
You know? It's right next to where the Venice Villas was,
right,
where Villas Drive.
Yes.
Dead ends into the Gulf of Mexico.
And that was built by Joe Spadaro, I guess.
Yes, and my father was his foreman, his contractor. Mm-hmm. He did the work there.
And they always said that Spadaro's buildings were so solid that not only would a hurricane not take them down, but when they tried to take a few of them down, it was really difficult. It took a long time.
They had a very difficult time. They built them very strong because they knew what hurricanes would do. Right. And they didn't need a building code to tell them that they needed to build them strong. Right. They wanted them to still be there.
Exactly. And also, now you mentioned the Boca Grande Hotel?
Yes.
On Boca Grande?
That's not there anymore. I think that was all dismantled
years
ago. It was on Boca Grande. I was so young.
Oh.
He told me stories about that he would take me to work with him. And I was very young. And he would drive Mr. Spadaro's dump truck from Golden Beach to Boca Grande because the road went right where Casperson's is now. There was a highway going right beside the water. And apparently I was rather bad about throwing things out the window of the truck. And he would get to work and find his hammer missing and different things. But I don't remember too much about it. I was very young.
Are you saying you could drive along the beach all the way from Venice to Boca Grande?
Yes, go to Casperson's Beach. And when you go down to where after you get past the facilities, if you go just a little bit further, you will see pieces of asphalt up where the dunes are, and then where they've been eroded away, where the hurricanes took them away long time ago.
Well, that is news to me. I have been here so long and haven't heard of that before.
Well, I don't recall ever driving down there. I was so young at the time, but I have seen where the road was.
Yes. So, go back to where I interrupted you about your dad coming here to work with Mr. Spadaro.
He came here and he went to Dick and Meadows drugstore sometimes to get a bite to eat or get something to drink, and he met a very nice lady. And her real name was Solveig, but she went by Penny. And they fell in love and they got married, and that was my mother. Okay. She was born in Sweden and moved to St. Paul, and her mother and sister had moved down here, and she followed them. And she came down, and then they met, and soon after, this is in the 40s, and soon after that I arrived and my brother arrived. My mother had previous 2 girls, and my older sisters, one lives in Inglewood now, Susan, and Nancy lives on a trawler. She lives on a boat down in Fort Myers and moves about.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yes, and my brother, my younger brother Michael, he is in Bradenton working for a big contracting company up there.
Much
He
like
used
his
to
dad,
run
huh?
yes, and he used to run the boys' clubs
Yeah.
up in Palmetto. We all went to school here. My sisters attended the old school up next to Spanish Point.
Yes, Venice Nokomis School.
I don't remember the name
Right.
of it, and then they went to Nokomis, and that school that is no longer there as well, and eventually to Venice High School. And my brother and I did the same thing as well.
Now, you told me that you were born in Sarasota because Venice Hospital didn't have.
Yeah, my father had to make sure that my mom got all the way to Sarasota
That was a long
day.
drive those
Yeah, it
days.
was. And I was born there, but my brother was born here. And 2 of my 3 children were born at Venice Hospital.
Oh, really?
Since, before they stopped doing maternity
Right.
at the hospital.
So what years was that? Do you remember?
For my children?
When Venice Hospital had a maternity
Well,
section.
it kind of went off and on
Oh, it did,
for a
okay.
while. And so it would have been mid-50s when they started delivering then. And I knew those original doctors, Thompson, Blades, and Dr. Kaplan. And I lived just about a block or 2 from Dr. Kaplan, and the other Dr. Kaplan, who's my age, and I grew up together and used to play music together.
So tell me about how you got involved with music.
Well, I grew up here in Venice, and I attended Venice Elementary School. And my teacher, who is still with us, coming to concerts still, Fern Nelson, she made me love music, and I knew that I would do that. Then I went to the junior high school, and I met Mr. Sleesman, and I played brass in the band. And then Mr. Theory came along, and Bob Bates, and I fell in love with choral music about that time. And the Sicilian Music Society, which now is called the Venice Musicale, gave me a scholarship. And I went to Manatee Community College, but at that time it was called Manatee Junior College, and received my AA, and very strong program. Florida State used to come and draft students from their program. And then I went to Florida State, did my bachelor's, and then I went back and got my master's in music therapy. And then I did a lot of other things. My father was a builder, and I wanted to build things. So I built lots of things, and I ran a sawmill for a while. And then I came back and was building with my father in Venice, and spent some time with him in his later years. And then he looked at me one day and he says, "Why are you sitting on this roof with all of those degrees that I helped you get? Why don't you go back to teaching, because you miss it?" And I'm okay. You don't have to stay here. So he gave me permission, and I did. And I taught at Venice Elementary for 6 years, which is where I went to school. Then I moved to Venice Middle School. I had attended Venice Junior High. I started teaching night courses at Manatee Community College, where I had been a student, and I ended up at Venice High School.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of retraced my steps.
Yes, you did, but in a different way, because we were talking earlier before we got on camera about how different the campus is. The grade school and the junior high and the high school all used to be on one campus, and the middle school, then it became middle school, moved out to East Center Road, and now the Venice High School and the elementary have been rebuilt. Quite different.
Very different. And I am so proud of Venice. I'm so proud to be from here, and that's why I wanted to come back and work here. They still want to keep a school in the center of their community. Rather than finding a cheap piece of property out in the middle of nowhere and shooing them off to a place like that, they want the community and the school to be united. I'm very, very proud of that. And now we've come full circle to where we're going to open a performing arts center that is the city and the school board together, bringing the performing arts to Venice. And we've been ready for that for a long time,
Yes.
but we're very excited that it's finally about to happen.
Yes, I heard people speaking of that back in '91, I believe, when I first came here to work, and not at the city, but in Venice. And it took us all this time, but here we are. So it is really special to people who've been here for a long time.
It is going to be magnificent.
Now, you probably know more about the details of the Performing Arts Center than I do. Tell us a little bit about what it's going to look like in there. What's going to make it so special?
Well, I've seen some pictures and peeked through some windows, and there are wood accented clouds in the ceiling. 1,200 seats, a balcony, magnificent stage, a hydraulic lift for the orchestra pit to come up, full fly space. You can bring in a full production of Les Miserables from New York, drive through Venice, set up, do a couple of shows, head for Naples. It's that big, but it can also be for our local symphony, our concert band, and our local chorale Exultate, along with the students at Venice High School. And we have some big plans next year in the concert season. We're going to be collaborating Exultate and the Venice Symphony, along with my students at the high school, to do a massive February performance.
Oh, that would be
and
beautiful.
other things will be happening as well.
So
Very exciting.
You're not only the choral teacher at the high school, but you're also the director of?
Well, right at the present time, I teach chorus, music theory, both beginning and advanced classes, and I'm the department chair for the performing arts. In the past, I've taught many other music courses as well, but that is what, and I was sort of appointed on this committee that has been meeting, and you know about it because you were on it too, talking about this Performing Arts Center for, what is it, 4 years?
At least.
Yes, it's been a very long time, and it took a lot of work by a lot of people donating their time. But the children and the adults in our community now have their own Performing Arts Center.
Well, the high school has always had a reputation for having a wonderful performing arts program, and now to have this wonderful facility in there, I can only imagine that it could even draw some nationally, internationally known people to come there. Similarly to the book program, where a literary figure from someplace in the United States
Absolutely.
comes and speaks, I can see them having sort of master lessons by some very renowned musicians.
This symphony already has plans started. Many people are paying attention and making note of it. And we are very fortunate that the principal, Mr. Turgeon at the high school, has appointed Mr. Miles Mowry, who is an outstanding theater director and understands how to make things like this work. And he's on the ground floor building the website, and everybody will hear about this place. It's going to be wonderful. And we have a very cultured community in
We do.
Venice. And they are going to want to see a variety of things. And now they don't have to drive to Sarasota
That's
to
right.
see it. They can see it right here in Venice.
And what is your role with Exultate?
Well, I'm the artistic director of the adult chorale Exultate in Venice. A good friend of mine, Woody McDonald, began the chorale, and he had been with Suncoast before that. And then he decided to retire and move out of town, and they asked me if I would do it, and I've been happily doing it for 4 years.
Oh, very nice.
And they've been doing in churches like the symphony. Everybody's been working at the community center in churches, and now the Venice Concert Band, the Venice Symphony, and Exultate will literally move into the building that I've been teaching
That's
chorus, and we've been teaching band, Mr. Case. That will be their rehearsal hall right next door as part of this agreement. It is going to be wonderful, and they'll be there to help students, to help the kids. And again, a school in the middle of a community where everybody is educating the children.
That's true.
I mean, this is the way it was supposed to be.
Absolutely. So let's go back a ways and tell me about going to school here. Where did you, like when you were in grade school, did you have a little stage in the cafeteria, or how did you?
A very small one, a very small stage in the they called it what did they call that when they put the stage? A cafetorium.
A cafeteria. Huh?
A cafetorium. And the junior high school shared performance space with the high school. And when I was a student there, they performed in the gymnasium, which when I went back to teach at Venice High School was called the Old South Gymnasium, which now is new buildings. It's gone. It's completely gone. And then they built the new auditorium, which is now quite an old auditorium. And I just did our final performance in that building on the 8th.
That's amazing.
And we sang a choral concert in there. And we all looked around and thought about all of the people that had been there before. And it was very nostalgic, and we did a very nice concert.
Oh, that's terrific. Now the high school, I mean, the only way I ever knew it was all the little buildings that you had to walk outside to. But it was different from that even probably when you were in school.
It was. There was a road connecting the elementary school past the middle school to the high school. There was another road there. And they just kept building buildings all around everywhere because they had more students. So it sprawled and it sprawled and it sprawled. And, you know, it really was not a good use of the taxpayers' money as it began to age past its usefulness. You're spending an enormous amount of money trying to keep things repaired and very energy inefficient with the old system. So they decided to really do a good job and build, and for safety, to not think of single story, but to think of multi-story, and then to make sure that they can secure the perimeter of the campus. The world has changed.
Yes, it has.
And we have to take extra precautions now.
Now, inside the high school building, there's some phenomenal things. In my mind, I got to have the tour, and there were things that made an impression on me, like a 3D printer. Who knew that kids would get to use that kind of thing? Computer labs and anything that any high school has, Venice High School has.
Venice High School is an outstanding place to get an education. I'm very proud to work there. I am honored to work with the faculty that works at the school. Outstanding. I made sure that all of my children went to Venice High School. And it is a wonderful place to go to school. And they offer anything that you want to take. It is just wonderful.
And so let's go backwards again and talk about growing up in Venice. That was in the 50s, I guess. So what did you do for fun? Because you didn't have a lot of stuff going on.
Oh, it was wonderful. You know, Harbor Drive was paved, but everything toward the beach was dirt roads. So you had to watch out for rattlesnakes and raccoons and things like that. But it was a community of people that understood how to live outdoors and to share with the bobcats and everything else that lived here with us. The beach was wide open. You could walk anywhere you wanted and get to the beach and get to the bay. It wasn't private property everywhere. You could ride your bike and take your fishing pole and just go by anywhere and go fishing. And got a little older and we'd have a car and we'd throw a canoe on top of it. And you could drive anywhere you wanted and launch your canoe and go fishing. So spent a lot of time on the water, spent a lot of time taking care of other people. Venice was a community where they looked after each other. And if there were older people that needed help taking care of their yard, doing things, then everybody would pitch in and help each other. It was a small town. It was a great place to grow up.
Did you ride your bike to school?
Yes, I rode my bike, and of course, until it wasn't cool, and then I started walking. You know, because I didn't want anybody to see me on a bike. I don't know why that wasn't cool, but at the time I thought so. Yes, and it was very close, and I went right by St. Mark's Church every day, and the bells rang. The bells rang, and I loved that sound. And went right over to the school where everything was. The elementary, the junior high, and the high school.
And in the winter, did you hear elephants and tigers?
Oh, I was one of the ushers.
Oh, fantastic.
You know, I was in the Venice High School band. And the Venice High School band ushered all the events for the circus. And when the Harlem Globetrotters would come through, we were also permitted to go to the game if we helped to usher people in. And you remember the trick that they do where they have the bucket of water, and you think that he still has the bucket of water, but it's a bucket of confetti, and he
right.
runs over and he tosses it at the crowd. I was the guy that got the confetti. We used the circus arena a lot, and I grew up a block from the Flying Gaiona's home, and went and sat there in their front yard and watched them flying and doing the triple somersault.
Even in the 90s, that was what you did in Golden Beach on the summer evening. You walked down to their house and watched them rehearse. And so the circus, and I know you could probably hear so many things here because of the water carries in a different way. So, well, I was going to ask you if you could hear the band practicing, but you were in the band, so you probably...
Well, you could hear much of everything, and in the time that I grew up, it was very uncommon for anyone to have an air conditioner. People had windows, and you opened your windows, and if you lived near the beach, there was this wonderful breeze coming through, but you could hear the surf all night long, and you go to sleep to the sound of the waves coming into the shore. And we didn't know that was, uncomfortable. We thought we were just fine. But now we seem to run air conditioners everywhere. We could hear that. There was the light pollution was different. You could go down to the beach and see the Milky Way. And you could see all the stars. And now there's so much light that it's difficult to see that. Very, very different place and different pace of life. But the old timers, my father became very good friend with many of the founding families that came here. And I just saw yesterday Glenn Stevens driving down Harbor Drive. What a wonderful man Glenn Stevens is. And I grew up with his kids. And the Currys and the Blackburns and the Deans and the Albies and all those original families came. And you see their names everywhere, naming bays and roads and creeks and things after them. And we grew up knowing all those people and explored out near the Mayaca River and out in those woods, as well as living here next to the beach.
Right.
And before there was an intercoastal waterway.
That's right.
When we used to be able to just ride our bike across where there's now water. And I remember there was a fun thing that some of us did where the old Fisherman's Wharf is, where Marker 4 is now. You could walk up there weren't homes and everything, and there was a great place to just walk up and dive off into the bay and swim right across to the other side. There was no intercoastal and the current wasn't so bad. And that was a shortcut that some of us would take when we were trying to get to other places. And some of the kids that did surfing and things, my brother, he used to go up and he would just jump off of the south jetties and paddle across to the north jetties on his surfboard, have to catch the tide right, because he wanted to surf on the north side.
I heard people used to, certain times of the year, just walk across.
Yeah. Well, some of the old timers, this is before my time, told me that the pass, before the rocks was there, used to wash in and it would just close up. Kind of like what I hear about down in Fort Myers now in a couple of places. And they said that the community would get together and they would get a gentleman with a mule to go down there with his plow and plow a furrow, and then everybody would shovel sand out and make a ditch and let that outgoing tide naturally open the pass up. I don't know if they were telling me stories or if that's true, but
I heard it too.
But they swore that that's what, and it called out everybody in town. They said the pass is closed, we can't go out and fish. Everybody come and help open it up.
That's amazing. So, Dickon Meadows, you mentioned before, where your mom, Dickon Meadows was on Venice Avenue, and it was a drugstore with a great big soda fountain.
Absolutely.
And that was where everybody learned their news, really.
Absolutely. With an arcade right next to it, and a barber shop. Mr. Roberts was back there cutting hair in the back, and it opened up back where it goes from Althea's to across to the parade ground for the KMI, the Kentucky Military Institute, which is now where the gazebo and thing and parking lot is. Yeah, there was. If you were a young man growing up in Venice, we were invaded by a whole bunch of young men from Kentucky, and so we were a little jealous of that because some of the girls became interested in some of the boys in uniform. But it all worked.
The competition
out okay.
was pretty steep.
But Dickon Meadows was a place where everybody went to find things out. I think it may have been the first building in Venice that had the little penguin in the window saying it's cool inside. They air conditioned it. And I knew the families well. Mr. Dick and his family, I grew up with his son, and the Meadows children were about my age. And my mother was a bookkeeper there for a little more than 30 years.
Wow.
Mr. Whiteman was the stockman in the back for many, many years. And
You must have known everyone's ailments in town.
Yeah, oh yes. And hand deliver whatever people needed.
Yeah, what a time, huh?
And then 3 doctors trying to take care of everybody in town and sharing things. And if somebody wasn't feeling well or had to be out of town or was busy, then maybe the other doctor needed to deliver your child or sew you up from, your injury. We knew everybody.
Right. Now, at that time, or when you were growing up, was there a theater on Main Street?
There actually was, and I don't remember what it was called. I remember that I would go there as a child on Saturday morning. 25 cents was the admission for a matinee. And they would do those movies like Hercules and things like that. Kids love that. But it was one of those old style theaters with the columns inside the balcony.
Nice.
And it was wonderful. I loved it. And I think then they took that down and put a bank there. And then I think they took that down and put another bank there.
So it's the bank on Venice Avenue is where the site was, which would have been next door to the second hotel that was built that was torn down for the post office.
Exactly. And my father built the vault for that original bank.
Oh, I have heard about that.
And they did not like what my father did when they had to tear that thing down because they could not break that vault apart. He put so much steel in it. He told them, I'll build you one that nobody can break into, and he did. And he did work on the Venice Beach Pavilion. And we are sitting in Venice City Hall, and he was instrumental in the work on this, along with the original fishing pier that was built before Sharkey's had moved in. But his first love was the First Baptist Church. And he volunteered over there and built many buildings. And one of the buildings carries his name now.
Oh, that's very nice. What was your father's name?
Byron.
Byron Johns.
Byron Johns, and my son's name is Byron as well.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yep, and he's very proud of that.
I'm sure he is.
We have a rich history
in
in Venice, but one last time, how proud I am that I live in a community that puts their hospital and their school in the middle of their community and takes care of children and takes care of the older population and look after each other.
Right.
I'm very proud of that.
That's what a community's about. Kind of got away from it with all the sprawl.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much for being on Venice Views and telling us your wonderful stories of your family and living here in Venice and what a wonderful place it was and still is. And thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again when we bring you more Venice Views.